Hey everyone, so now we're going to be briefly going over the carbon tax bill. Before we start, I would recommend taking a few notes if you want, but don't worry about getting everything down because you will have these videos, and this is just a brief overview. So this bill is about a carbon tax, as you can see, and I would recommend pausing the video here to quickly read over the bill. On the screen, you see a definition by the Tax Policy Center. But ultimately, a carbon tax means an entity such as yourself or a business is taxed depending on how much carbon they consume. And that tax is used in terms of this bill to fight climate change. A metric ton is around 2,205 pounds, and TerraPass says an equivalent is, quote, the average American creates 23 tons of CO2. In 2010, New York City emitted 54 million metric tons of carbon dioxide, and a single hour of the city's CO2 emissions amounted to 6,204 metric tons. Next, the Tax Policy Center says, quote, the Internal Revenue Service administers the federal tax laws that Congress enacts. The EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency, and subsidies. Investopedia defines a subsidy as, quote, a benefit given to an individual, business, or institution, usually by the government. It is usually in the form of cash payment or a tax reduction. Some current stats on the role of subsidies. In 2015, the US spent almost $650 billion to subsidize coal, oil, and gas. Next, wind and solar energy are forms of clean energy. Lastly, increase of 5% adjusted for inflation means the basic price for a ton of CO2 is $30 in this bill, which will increase each year, but the rate of increase will vary based on how the economy is doing. So, the major affirmative argument is climate change. A carbon tax would mitigate climate change in the private sector and even in households because there would be a shift to green energy. Thus, shifting our money to this industry takes off our reliance on oil. And then on the government side, the tax would be used to subsidize green energy, a double benefit. It is going to be really important here to explore how you can impact climate change in your arguments. Next, the Brookings article explains that a carbon tax would, quote, reduce the United States' economy's dependence on foreign sources of energy, which is really key. You can find ways to make the economy one of your main impacts and do some more research as to how a carbon tax would both stimulate businesses and the economy, because there's a lot of literature out there about this. Although it may seem the strategy is to go affirmative because you can impact climate change, there are some disadvantages. For example, with a sole profit motive, companies may be incentivized to move their production to a country without a carbon tax. You could also bring up the issue or question people how you can measure carbon emitted. Next, a big issue in this topic is economics. There is literature on both sides for this argument, so it is crucial you understand the economic implications. On the negative, some suggest such tax would slow economic activity. Lastly, a key strategy you can use is agreeing that we need some sort of carbon tax, but not the one proposed with this bill. You can take issue with the $30 aspect or anything really that may pose a problem. For this, studying examples is crucial as it will show you what's worked and what hasn't. Furthermore, I strongly suggest you agree we need a solution to climate change, but this may not be it. So as we get into examples, you need to be very careful as to what you use to make your argument because someone can use your example to prove their point. Ultimately, make sure you know details about the policy that was enacted, and that will come with research. Here I've listed some examples that one article had, and I suggest going over each to see A, how similar it is to our bill, and B, if there was a positive or negative effect on climate change or the economy, or whatever argument you are making. I will go over two successful examples, but again, before you use these, look at the details, and if you are on the negative, create rebuttals against these examples. First, The Canadian province of British Columbia, according to the University of Ottawa, in 2012 saw an almost 10% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions, almost double that of the rest of Canada. But a key difference is they gave the collected taxes back to the people. Second, in the United Kingdom, according to the New York Times, the use of coal drastically decreased and so did greenhouse gas emissions, as they reached the lowest point since 1890.